Good afternoon, guys. Dr. Ken Norberg again. We're back. Start out with a little bragging. You know, I live in Minnesota. The temperature right now, I think, is 68 degrees. A little bit rainy today, kind of nice. The rest of the country seems to be having a hard time. If you ever want to get out of the heat and go a place where there's good hunting and a lot of fishing, this isn't a bad place to live. So, well, last time I talked to you, and I said it was a long talk. I reviewed it this morning. I said, "Holy cow, that was a long one." We talked at length about avoiding being smelled by big bucks or any deer that you're hunting. We talked about a lot of things that you have to do when you're thinking about where to stand hunt around a feeding area. And I mentioned that there were 3 places where whitetails spend all their time during the hunting seasons. That's feeding areas and bedding areas and watering spots. And so logically, the best place is to hunt near one of those 3 places. Well, bedding areas aren't exactly the best, but they can be good if you're especially good at getting close to a bedding area without whitetails knowing it. But it's tricky too because of having to deal with wind direction and trail sense. I'm getting used to the idea that trail scents are as important as avoiding being detected by whitetails by airborne scents. And today I'm going to show you one place that we hunt a lot in Minnesota. That's one feeding area. It's kind of a big one. It's been real productive for us for more than 30 years, really. And it's got the only stand site in it that has been repeatedly productive. All the rest of them, most of our stand sites are only good for 1 buck. For all kinds of reasons. I won't go into all that again. So getting more than 1 buck at a particular stand site is kind of a rare thing. We've had a few where we got as many as 5. One on this one has been more like 10. But part of the reason is that we're so darn careful with wind direction and trail scents in hunting this area. In fact, well, here, just for an example, here's the feeding area. This is an old clear cut. Now, today it's covered with brush and young trees. You can sit anywhere around this thing all day long and there can be 100 deer in there. And you can't see one of them because of the way it's growing. Most of the young trees and a lot of the grasses are taller than deer. And once in a while, if you're lucky, one of those deer, 1 or 2 deer or a buck, will step into a little opening out in all this mess out there that's growing up, and you'll see it, and you'll be able to shoot it. It's still better than this spot here right now. Today, if I had only one place to hunt, I would go here. But it's a big one. This thing is about 50 acres at least. It's a big one. All these black dotted lines are deer trail. And like most favorite feeding areas of whitetails that have existed for a while, there's always a perimeter trail around the whole thing, in the woods. So all the area around us is all forest area. But that trail runs back in there 10, 20 yards away from the edge of the opening, and that's in this periphery trail. In the periphery trail, we talked a little bit about that before, it's got a lot of uses as far as whitetail. The reason that it's there, let's say a whitetail was coming in on this trail, coming in here. At this point, he couldn't see much of this over here, this whitetail. But he knows, you know, since he's going to be more vulnerable than almost anywhere in a day, as he will be in an opening while feeding. You know, it's hard for him to keep track of what might be around there, whether wolves or bears or humans. So he wants to know, make sure beforehand that it's going to be safe to be out there before it goes out into this opening. So what he'll probably do, rather than just go walking out there, you know, a fawn or a yearling would do that. They just walk right out there and not realize how dangerous that could be. He'll get on this peripheral trail, and if he was worried about this area, he probably would go up along here and get up to the edge in several places, check out the scents that are drifting toward him from upwind. Or he might go this way and do the same thing. That way he can see all the way down there. And if there was a wind from the south, he could travel along this edge here and smell any wolf or bear or human in or around the edge of this thing by doing that without being seen, by staying back in the woods while he's walking on there. So this is why these perimeter areas are eventually made by whitetails around favorite feeding areas, because they use them to move this way and that to help make sure that it's going to be safe to be out there and feeding when we're busy chewing their head down, things like that. So they want to make sure it's safe. So that's why there's a periphery trail. Now, there's lots of places where trails enter here around the edges. There's one here that comes up into this little kind of bay here. Over this way, this corner, there's lots of places here where whitetails can enter to get into this feeding area from forested area around it. Now, watching it doesn't make sense to you, a place where those two trails like this entry trail here and this periphery trail cross one another, you'd probably be, and if you stay back from them and you're downwind from the cross, you know, where they cross, and you're over here and there's openings, you can see out into this area from the openings. This would be a lot better place than somewhere like right here where there isn't more than one trail along the edge of the clear cut. So whenever we're scouting, we're looking for places to hunt. We're always looking for these cross trails, the entry trails coming from around it. There's always some on the feeding area. It's like spokes of a wheel around the feeding area. When whitetails go to a feeding area, they like to come in from downwind. They can smell things that are out in the feeding area before they enter it. And then when they want to leave, they want to go into the wind off the trail so they can smell what might be out here when they leave that to go into the forest area. So, yeah, on an average day, you know, or morning, say, these whitetails come into this area on this end while there was a north wind, because it's on the south wind. And they could feed and zigzag and move all the crowd down this way for the next 2-3 hours, and 4 hours even, taking their time and then finally leave on the other end. Keep that in mind. That's kind of something to think about too, you know. Like, for example, let's say you're thinking the old way, you know, well, the best place to be is on the downwind end. Well, that would be all right in the morning because these deer are out here feeding already shortly after 4 o'clock in the morning, that early. You can get out here and sit at a stand site out there and you can hear them once in a while. Brush cracking where they stepped on something or they jumped across something or over something. You can hear that out there in the dark. You say, oh, there's deer out here. How about that? But you can't see them. But they're out there already, so if you came from that side, that would be all right. But if you sit here, and finally it's legal shooting time, say an hour and a half, an hour later after you arrive, where are those deer going to be? They're not going to be here. They're going to be over in the middle here or maybe getting up close to this other end. So sitting downwind in the morning isn't necessarily great. Yeah, the deer can't smell you, but they're going to be over on some distant part of the clear cut after a while, and maybe you can sit there all morning and never see them because they're all over here already, and then they leave by some upwind trail over on the other end. So you improve your odds if you're thinking that way. So then you start thinking, well, maybe I should be somewhere in the middle, like right there. that's a good idea, because the other deer come in, especially if the wind is from the north, that wouldn't be good. You know, there's a lot of days when we can't hunt this thing because the wind direction is wrong. A straight north wind wouldn't be good. A northwest wind would be excellent when across it like this. You could be here then all day and they can't smell you, unless they happen to be over right around this bay. There was a time, several years ago, John was using this stand, and he wasn't seeing deer. And we were finding that a big buck, and we were finding his tracks and droppings over in this little bay, and it was almost like he knew John was going to come and end up there, no matter how he got there, and he'd smell him, and maybe even hear him, and he would disappear. And that was, he couldn't get that buck that year. That thing just outsmarted him all the time by actually even bedding there. And so bucks can be smart about things like that. Another thing is, some years ago, the only way to get there is on a trail I opened up way back about 30 years ago. That comes in from the side, goes way out here, way a long way around. To go there from our camp is a 2-mile hike. Well, one of the great things that we didn't realize it at the time, it was our only choice to get to this place. Everything over here and over here, it was a terrible area to get through to get to this place. But one of the good things about making this long 2-mile trip around there to get to this stand site was nowhere, anywhere close to this clear cut, in any direction, would a whitetail that's feeding there run across your fresh trail scent, going or coming from there. Let's say you came to this place and you wanted to hunt over at a spot right here, and the wind was from the southeast. We get a lot of southeast winds coming from this direction. Like this. So, oh, this would be a great place. So you come in there. Eventually there was a kind of a road, but it wasn't much of a road. But we would come in from this corner here, and when you get to this, then you figure, well, I'll just take that perimeter trail like this over to here. Now, let's say you were going to hunt there this evening, and in the evening, and you did this. Now, what you did is create a long line of trail scent that's fairly fresh. You know, when a whitetail comes to a trail scent, puts his nose down where you put your foot down, or in the snow or on the ground, he can tell you're human, you know, and if you've been hunting the area a long time, he even knows which human it is, because every human has little differences in their odors. You're a human, and he knows how long ago you walked on that trail, how fresh that trail scent was, and what direction you went. So let's say you walked in on this trail, and here comes, you're waiting about maybe 3, 4 o'clock, 4 o'clock in the evening. This big buck decides, I'm going to go over there and eat, and he comes in over on this side somewhere like this. And when he hits that perimeter trail, he finds your fresh trail scent, and he knows which direction you went. And it's kind of fresh then, you know, at that point. He's not going to go that way. He might decide, I'm going to go feed somewhere else. It would be the same thing to do. He knows a human is over here somewhere. So anyway, one of the nice things about taking a 2-mile trip, you don't leave any trail scents. It tells the deer coming or going that there's a human here, or was here a short while ago. Like, for example, let's say you went here in the morning, you didn't see anything, but that doesn't mean there's nothing there. Boy, that's so full of brush and stuff. It could still be real good there. So when you left there, maybe you went out the way you went in, you know. Well, later, when that deer comes and you come back there and sit there again in the evening and say it's downwind, and the deer's coming in from downwind, you're right in front of him. He's going to run across your fresh trail scent on that scent. He's going to run into your airborne scent at that site when he comes back in the evening. You ever wonder why you never see so many deer in the evening when you're deer hunting? Because your trail scents, if you went back to the same plot, have told any deer coming in from downwind, you're there. And your airborne scent, now they know you're not. They're not going to want to bother you. They aren't going to go to that spot now that they know you're there. So, we've gotten to the point nowadays where we approach and sit crosswind, especially if we think that we're going to come back to that site later, or even tomorrow, or the day after tomorrow, because your trail sense will, I got a pussycat here, it's bothering me for attention. One of the things we do all the time, we're always thinking about trail sense and when we're going to our stand sites. Now, some years later, we created a way to come in around this way. It's kind of a shortcut when the wind was, favorable. Like if you had a wind anywhere from the southwest to the southeast, we could come in around this north end, back of the woods here, and it would only be about not even a mile to get there. We used the old way as 2 miles in the dark, stumbling in the dark, pitch black out there. You got to know where you're going. So this was kind of a nice shortcut here. When you come in that way, you're putting in trail scent close to the margins of the deer, of this feeding area. And any deer that happen to come in this way, from the side, maybe perhaps from the north end here on this side that, I'm going to go along here, this perimeter trail, and check it out before I walk out there and start eating. He's going to run into your trail scent here somewhere. And at the end of it, he's going to go just feed somewhere else. So trail scent, the scent you leave behind plays a really important role in how successful you are at hunting deer, especially older deer, does included. But any buck that's 4.5 years of age or older is always checking trails, and they know you by the odors of your trail scents. Your trail scents are different than anybody else's. They smell it, that's you. And if you're a good hunter and you're hunting in a lot of areas where that buck likes to spend time, then he's going to think, well, this hunter has a habit of showing up where I want to go before I even think of wanting to go there. And that happens a lot with us, our bucks. They've taught us, they know that. But anyway, anytime you're leaving trail scent where they're going to find it close to where you're going to hunt, your odds of seeing a big buck start going down quite a bit. Nowadays, it's kind of our rule to keep at least 200 yards away, from the upwind side of a stand site. And always stay about 200 yards away until you're on the downwind side of the place where the deer are feeding. And then go straight toward that stand site, crosswind, if it's enough of an angle so your scent isn't going out into any portion of that feeding area. But you want to have 200 yards all the way around to where you're going to go to the stand, and then go straight into the stand from downwind. We do that. It's that far away. And why 200 yards? Well, I remember when I first started experimenting with how well deer smelled and how far away you had to be. And in an open area, I had a high stand site where I could see deer when they were feeding on the field. And I did this again at one time in South Carolina, a high stand site where I could see an open area where deer were in South Carolina. Did the same thing. I was 35 feet up in the tree. In fact, my wife was up there with me a couple times. She'd gone up there with me, but pretty high off the ground. Well, we noticed that a deer could be right under the tree and not smell you, except for trail scent. You got all kinds of trail scent on the ground under there. that might not tell a yearling buck that this is a dangerous place, but it tells a big buck it is. But then we get up high on the tree, and you could have deer walk right in front of you, downwind of you, and you could swear, gee, they can't smell me, and they're downwind. But it's because your odors just don't drop like rocks. You know, those odor molecules that the deer can smell, they don't drop like rocks or sand right down below the tree. They're drifting downwind, away from the tree. And they finally get close enough to the ground, maybe as far as 50 yards away from your stand site before they can smell you in the tree there. It's a lot of times it's closer than that. But it could get out to that. If the wind is stronger, your odor molecules might not hit the ground until it goes further and further away. But we noticed that deer after that, they definitely smell it. Gee, one could come walking into there and all of a sudden they're looking over your way and sniffing. But we learned that if they're about 200 yards away or more, they aren't worried about you. You know, they're 200 yards away, they don't worry about it. This is forest deer, you know, lots of cover and that kind of thing, but they just didn't seem to be worried at all if you were that far away. If you were moving toward them, that's another story. They can tell when you're moving toward them by your odors. But anyway, so 200 yards is kind of an important one. In other words, if you were closer than 200 yards and there were deer out here and you got upwind of them, they might decide, yeah, and then your scent is getting stronger, indicating you're coming closer. You might hear you stepping on twigs while you're coming, and you can tell by your footsteps, gee, something's coming this way. They're going to get out of there before you even get close to this enough to see them. Anyway, that's why it's 200 yards away. You want to keep 200 yards away from this clearing until you're downwind, and then you can go directly to your stands. In time and years, we said, well, there were times when we wish we could hunt, be able to go in and sit in different areas around this thing. And a few years ago, we created this long trail, you know, the red line here. We extended it to some of our. We had some cruise trails. We had 2 miles, 2 miles in that direction were areas we regularly hunt. We have cruise trails out there. We could connect them. And from that time on, instead of just coming in from this side, we could start coming in from this way. It wasn't 2 miles, but it was sure a tough walk, just the same, coming in from that direction. We always, no matter how bad it was, we always felt it was really worth it, because being that careful about this clear cut, this big one, always paid off. Whatever you do, you know, you got to be thinking about your trail scent wherever you go. Besides planning to where we want to hunt every year, how we're going to get there, we also plan about ruining other spots. Spots that might turn out to be good spots if you don't ruin it. And what I'm really saying is we're always planning about minimizing trail scents. The hunters back when I first started hunting were all worried about trail scents. You had all kinds of stories about the ways they tried to eliminate trail scents as a problem, and it's kind of gotten forgotten along the way. And there was a little resurgence of that back in the 80s, some more ways that people were trying to prevent trail scents from ruining your hunting. But today, hardly anybody even thinks about trail scents. We're always thinking about minimizing the effect of our trail scent, you know, and only spending as little time as possible at our best stand sites while hunting, and even between that. And also, when we find a spot that we want to hunt, what John has been with me a lot in recent years, when we found places that looks really good, and when that happens, we get in a real hurry to get this, whatever we have to do to get the stand site ready, and the less the better, and get the heck out of there and never show up again in that area until opening day or when it's time to hunt. That's another way to minimize trail scent. That can ruin it for you before you even come back there. For a long time there, in the beginning, when we started noticing bucks were starting to avoid our stand sites before we even had a chance to use them. And we were wondering what in the world's making this happen. And I know one of the things a few years ago I noticed is that I hunt at ground level exclusively now. My family won't let me climb trees anymore. So I hunt at ground level only. But when I pick a stand site, I always try to pick one where there's some natural object that's fallen on the ground, or there's already there, like a big boulder, a pair of boulders with a little space in between, something like that, or a big tree falling down, or some old dead stuff that happen to be in a pile here. But I'll find a spot that looks pretty good. And what I used to do, if there was some holes, gaps in the concealment, where if I was sitting there and they moved and a buck was standing over there, I could see my legs move or something like that, or part of my body, I would cut a bunch of evergreen boughs and push it in around here, around the blind, the natural blind, to cover up those holes. And I'll be darned, those bucks, those kind of blinds in the woods, natural blinds in the woods that have been altered in that way, they'd start avoiding them right away. Quite a few of them. Oh, this is our fourth blind. We added a few evergreens out on top here that kind of breaks up your outline of your head here. But this is all a deer will be able to see of me, is my head sticking up like this. I'll be wearing my camel head net, camel cap, like this one. I mean, it was a dandy spot, but darn it, I wasn't seeing anything at those spots anymore. And then when they finally had snow on the ground, you could see where a buck had gone a good distance around it. Here's this trail. I was thinking, I'm going to get that buck when he goes by on this trail. Find a flat where he left the trail, went way over there. Well, maybe I'd try to go there, but I followed the tracks and he come around, he got back on the trail way over that way. He took a good detour around the area, wide detour. And you go back and look at that and look at that, and I said, why would he do that? How would he know I even did that? I didn't even walk on that trail anywhere. So it couldn't have been my trail scent that made the difference. And I looked at it, and I started thinking, well, would those evergreen boughs be doing that? In more recent years, I quit using those evergreen boughs to do that. Those deer live in that woods. It's like your own home where you live. If there's anything different, if somebody throws a cup from the street and it ends up in your lawn, you know it right away. Well, same thing with these bucks. They see any difference, little difference ahead of them that wasn't there yesterday, they're going to be really suspicious about it. They're going to stop and look at it. Look at it. They'll stand there without you even realizing, or if you do realize it's way over there. And I wish he'd move out from behind that tree over there so I can get a shot. And he'd just stand there and look at it. Wait. They can be so patient about that. And then I've had times where I thought, well, I thought that was a buck over there, but maybe it isn't even a buck. And I'm moving, the way it goes, it's how we move. That's what he was waiting for a sound or a scent or anything that would tell him there's a human over there. So they're so patient about that. Well, our bucks were getting better and better at it because every day they went out, when it's time for them to get up from their beds and do moving around, and it's hunting season, there's shots in the distance, things like that. So those bucks know they're sick and tired of the fact that, well, this buck decided, I've been over there for weeks, but I'm going to go over to, or, for maybe or a week or whatever. I'm going to go over this way and go over to this feeding over area here, or I'm going to go look for does along this one trail over this way, and go over and use that one. And I'll be damned, one way or another, if that human has been here, or that human has been on this trail. Here's this trail scent to prove it. That's all it needs. That's the only evidence it needs. So I'm not going that way. I'm going to go this way. We had bucks that lived in our hunting area that wouldn't go anywhere until they found us in the morning. They'd be out there in the dark looking for us. And they weren't satisfied till they found us. And some were so good at it, over and over and over again. Some of them would, or they'd go around you and come up you from the backside. I had that happen too many times, big buck. I'd be sitting there and haven't seen anything. I'm looking into the wind, it's going this way. I've been a spruce clump, real thick, and hardly just little holes in it. And finally I said, oh Jesus, getting cold, I better zip up my pants. It's cool. And I go, zip, snort, doggone thing, he was checking on me, was behind me. Those bucks that do that stuff just kill you. There's been many bucks in the area we've hunted all these years that we could not get. We just couldn't get it. We got to the point where we always had 2 or 3 bucks in mind to hunt and places to hunt it before every hunting season started, because you probably, the one you really want to get, you probably won't get them. Something like that's going to happen. I've had it happen many times. I worked so hard to get this buck, and then doggone it, he made a fool of me. So, okay, I'll go shoot my second, or hunt my second one and get that one, and end up not getting that really big one. Okay. Well, then another thing, we're not only taking care about wind direction. First thing when I get up in the morning in deer camp, right, when I go outside, first thing in the morning, the first thing I want to know is what's the wind direction. So, that's the most important thing before we even leave camp. What is the wind direction? And how in the heck are we going to get to a place, any place like this, without goofing up? So there's 2 scents you have to always be thinking about. That airborne scent, which is immediate. I mean, no matter when the deer smells that, they're going to be reacting one way or another immediately to that. And then trail scent. Now, they're only going to react on it where they ran across it, and then they'll smell and decide what they're going to do. But when you're walking along that and your scent is going downwind, after a while you get over here and they can't smell you anymore. But the trail scent just stays there for up to 4 days. It takes a while for it to finally disappear, unless it rains or snows on it. Snow, a couple inches of snow on there, and the trail scent's pretty much taken care of. Or if it rains fairly hard anyway, and it washes it away, and there's no more trail scent there. But normally it'll take that long. It takes a lot longer for the trail scent made by an ATV to go away. A week or more, maybe longer than that. The oils and the exhaust just don't disappear as quickly as the odors coming off your body that creates the trail scent. So, anyway, we never hunt this more than maybe 1 to 3 times a year. And that's it. No more trail scent. We go in there maybe one time, maybe a deer finally runs across a trail scent somewhere around the perimeter of this thing where you came in, or even on your trail, this red line leading to this stand site here. They'll run across it, but if you only go to this and hunt this spot a couple times a year, there's not much trail scent there. Keep that in mind too. When you go out in the woods, you're looking for a place to hunt. Where you want to put your tree stand or hunt at ground level. you know, how much time do you usually spend at that site preparing your stand site? You know, if you're going to put something in the tree, well, you're going to be cutting limbs, you're going up there, before you even go there, you're going to be walking around here before you finally say, wow, look at all these tracks here, and all these tracks here on this trail. Over there, that trail is well used, you know. You learn all that stuff there. You're planting a ton of trail scent there right to start with. And whitetails, bucks, you know, our bucks have taught us. There's been lots of bucks over the years, in the last 30-some years, 34 years, we've hunted in my current study area, where these older bucks have been able to teach us lessons. They taught us that in time, they learned everything about us, trails we use, the stand sites we use, how we smell, what our voices sound like, where we hunt, where we like to sit in trees, things like they learn all those things about us. And if you keep doing the same thing year after year after year, you hardly ever see deer. Like maybe some strange big buck got chased in from an adjoining square mile by other hunters, and he didn't know this area very well, and he might stumble across you. You might not know, this is a dangerous place, you know, there's hunters sitting around here. So, but our deer that lived there, they learned all this from them. And it got to the point where we knew we just couldn't keep doing the same thing every year and using the same stand sites every year. Sure, we could see other deer there, but those big bucks had us pegged for the rest of their life. Well, a big buck, a 4.5-year-old buck, is only going to live 2 more years anyway, but the rest of his life is a couple more years. That buck's not going to go anywhere near any spot that he knows like that we're stand hunting at. So finally we decided we got to start changing stand sites more often. And it finally got to the point where we started changing it every half day. Now, every time you go to a new stand site you've never used before, never used it before, and the first time you use it, you're at a site that buck doesn't realize you're using. This is a totally unexpected stand site, and boy, does that increase the probability you're going to take a big buck. Our best stand sites in the last, about 15, 20 years have been sites we've never used before. Never used before. You know, anytime you get a big buck, you can't wait to go back there next year and go to the same spot. We all do that. I've done that. Everybody does that. Yeah, but we learned from that, well, what happened? How come this, you know, this is no big buck hotspot? It's because, you know, big bucks learn more about you so quickly. It only, today, if I'm in the woods, it only takes a big 10-pointer, a split second of seeing me move or hearing me make a familiar sound. One of the familiar sounds was my grunt call. I took 3 nice bucks using that buck call when I first got it. From that time, it has been 0. And nowadays, I go up there and I make a noise, so it's gut saw. It's that hunter. It's Doc. That's him making that noise, and I'm not going anywhere near that spot because he's dangerous. So anyway, everything gets to be familiar, and you know they learn that so quick. Those older bucks learn that from a split second to maybe 3 hours of hunting at a new stand site. Just think about that now. All the time you spend when you find a stand site, oh, this really looks good. Like, say, there's a rub on the tree, or there's 6 inches of diameter. Man, that's a big buck. And here's lots of tracks here that are 4 inches long, and droppings an inch long, you know, fresh on this trail right here. And right here's a feeding area, right here. And maybe here's a stream here, and here's a crossing here where deer have been going across and going over to that spot. And boy, this is a double a good spot to be sitting in this area, this trail coming here, and keeping that perimeter trail between you and the edge of that, and with this, all this buck sign here. And let's say you're going back to camp in the evening. This happens to be a lot in the evening. I'm going back to camp, it's dark. I'm going along with a flashlight, you know, along one of my cruise trails, or maybe it's a stand side approach trail, and I come across some really fresh tracks in the snow, like 3-inch tracks and 4-inch tracks. And that buck with the 4-inch track, he's dragging his hoof in the snow, so it looks like what my boys would call railroad tracks in the snow. And these two deer were going over to this area over here on the left, and there's a feeding area that's full of red osiers. They like this time of year, like starting at about the 8th of November, they just love red osiers and sugar maple saplings, which are red, and all that kind of thing. And they went over there. You can hardly sleep that evening because you know, for example, that doe is going to only be in heat for 24 to 26 hours, but you haven't seen any tracks like that around here until you ran across them now. So that doe probably hasn't been in heat very long. And so those two deer are feeding, they're going to be there in the morning in that same spot. Now does, they're easier to predict where they're going to go. And if there was no reason that doe had to be alarmed for any reason in this area, it's going to go back. It'll be there in the morning. And that buck is going to be with that doe. That's the bread and butter of how we keep taking big bucks everywhere. When we find railroad tracks and things like that in the snow, we know they're going to be there. Well, the next morning, of course, now we have the problem that we want to get there without them knowing us, all that kind of thing. And without being careless about leaving trail scent where they're likely to run across it. If we didn't see them right away, or we saw them, but they were on the other end already, and you just got a few glimpses of them, and then they were gone. But they'll be back again this evening. So anyway, whenever that happens, that's a pretty exciting discovery. But it isn't going to happen very often. If you people, and you know, all this, I'm talking about all the things that we've talked about here today, if you people keep putting trail scent all over your deer hunting, it just gets worse and worse and worse, and pretty soon the deer you really like to get are gone. They just get so sick and tired of running across your trail scent, and they know it's dangerous. They're going to leave it until the hunting season is over, or become completely nocturnal until the hunting season is over. So I'm going to take a minute. I'll be back in a minute. I'm going to erase this board, and I'm going to put another diagram on the board. Now, keep in mind, all this foolishness is about hunting older bucks. The most difficult to hunt deer in the woods, the kind most hunters never see or rarely see. You can see them more often, quite a bit more often. You start doing some of the things that I've been talking to you about in all these YouTube seminars. But here's a square mile of my hunting area. See there on the board? There it is. There's a square mile. Now, what I mentioned a little while ago, we don't walk all over our woods hunting like a lot of people. You know, they get out there and they want to walk, and they figure the further they walk, the better their odds are of getting a big buck. But it doesn't work that way. It gets worse and worse instead of better and better. Your odds start going down. We don't want trail scent all over this square mile. People walking around, and that's when you're most visible to the deer and easiest to hear and smell and everything, and check on you and get downwind you and check on you. They can do all that real easy when you're walking around because they're so easy to keep track of. So within each square mile area, we make a trail that we call a cruise trail. And we call it that because we learned this from wolves, and they have cruise trails. But let's say here, what we'll do is we'll have a trail that's a connection of deer trails that ring themselves all the way around through the square mile. That's actually, well, and most of these will be close to feeding areas, so we can check out trails going into feeding areas along this cruise trail. This is a trail. We borrow deer trails to do this. This is a series of connecting deer trails. We make this so, for one reason, that every day during the hunting season, if you do it properly, you can walk on this without alarming any deer. Without alarming, seriously alarming any deer. Now, if they see you on this trail, walking on it, if you're doing it right, it doesn't matter if you're going upwind, downwind. If you're doing it right, when you're walking on this trail, and that's what you're doing is you're walking steady, you're not stopping. You know, when let's say a deer is over here and you're walking on the trail and if every 6, 10 feet you stop, look around, what would that, you know what that deer's saying? Well, let's ask it, let's say if you were sitting here in the woods and there's 500-pound tigers living in this woods. Now, if you see a tiger walking along the woods and stopping and looking around and it's getting closer and closer to where you are, would you feel safe? If it keeps stopping, you know, here's some steps, then it's silent. I mean, when a predator's doing that, the deer is saying, he's found me, he smelled me or something, or saw me, and now he's stalking me. If you were sitting here, you would swear a tiger was stalking you, hearing footsteps and stopping, just taking his time and halting and stopping again. You'd be scared to death here. See, but if that tiger was walking at a unhurried pace, but moving right along, walk along this, not stopping, just going, you wouldn't be afraid. It's not hunting. It hasn't discovered you. That's the difference between the big. When a deer hears a man walking steady along a fixed route, a trail, meaning I can hear him, he's coming, and when he gets here, he's going to be here, and then the next thing he's going to be here, and he's going to be on that trail, and I stay here, he's not going to find me or see me. But if he's walking right along, upwind, downwind, whatever, he's not hunting, and so he's safe. I don't have to move. I'm not real next to the trail. If I was here, I heard something coming, walking steady like that, maybe I'd move over in cover there and stand there and watch while this guy goes by. I don't care what anybody says, and I've said it so many times. When you go sneaking through the woods and stopping every few steps, you're not sounding like a deer. There's so many reasons why the deer doesn't hear you crunching, chewing on whatever it's eating and things like that, or breaking off browse or biting off browse branches or bunches of grass. It doesn't hear you doing that. It doesn't hear you any other sounds that you might be making while you're out there. But if you're walking without stopping, that's not hunting behavior. It might be saying, well, I'm going to keep an eye on this guy in case he does stop, and in case he does see me. I'm going to watch him. I'm going to stay hidden here. I'm going to freeze and watch him go by. It just keeps going. Oh, nothing to worry about. Well, anyway, we'll be talking about cruise trails more on future seminars, but this is our main trail. We borrowed some deer trails. There's hundreds of deer trails out. Now, well, you could say, yeah, you probably could walk through this woods and count an awful lot of deer trails in this woods. We're going to borrow a few just for us. Now, we're going to use this trail to look for fresh deer signs during during the hunting season, daily if necessary, to know where to hunt next. And we're going to do it in the way that I just talked about. Wolves taught us all this, by the way. And you walk around this thing like this, and in any direction, they can smell you coming, but as long as you keep moving, they're not going to worry about you, as long as you're staying on the trail and moving steady without stopping, acting like you're stalking. If you're not stalking, that's fine. So then there's another set of trails we use, and they branch off this trail, going to stand sites. Now, stand site trails, stand site trails, they branch off of here. Now let's say this is a trail to our camp, and we walk out there, and that's a deer trail too. We borrow that. And most of these stand site approach trails are also borrowed deer trails. Only used once this season. We use it once when we're scouting, and we pick out a stand site to use, and that's done early, no less than 2 to 3 weeks before hunting season starts. And we never go back there again, not even to look at a trail cam. This trail is holy. You can't use that. You can do what you want on this one. This is the one that we walk on all the time. And you know what's crazy about that cruise trail? After you've used it a lot, the deer around here starts to realize, especially during the hunting season, you don't go anywhere else except on that trail. It's safe over here, and it's safe here, and all those kind of places. Those deer aren't going to abandon your hunting area during the hunting season. They're going to stay there all the time, the whole hunting season. You may not see much of them here except for where they've crossed it, walked on it, and even walked on it a while to go somewhere and then went off somewhere else like that. You're going to see tracks. They've learned that when you walk on this trail, you're harmless. Walking on this trail only during the hunting season keeps deer in your hunt. And every day you hunt at a new stand site that branches off of this trail, it's like opening morning all over again. See? So, isn't that something that during the hunting season, if these trails here and this trail here are the only trails we use during hunting season. So we don't go off in new areas here. So the deer don't have to start worrying, gee, now we're going all over the place. That's not good. We want them to stay here, be normal, act normally, feed at normal hours and drink and all those kind of things, and be predictable. By using a cruise trail, and stand site trails are only used once. So you go in there, we go in there early, there's no trail set there anyway. It hasn't been there for weeks before the season starts. So these are safe, all these approach trails are safe trails, but completely safe. The deer don't worry about anything there because there hasn't been any trails set there for a long time. But look at what happens. Let's say this is one you picked out before the deer season, and every day you kept going along here to that same spot, and you kept stopping along the way and looking to see if there's a deer around, sneaking and stopping often. You're renewing the scent over and over again, and all the way to the spot when if you were doing a lot of work around, it's reeking with trail scents. And you keep going back to it. Well, this is, when they learn that, and you sneak and stop off and on, this is all dangerous, the whole hunting season. And so you're going to be avoiding it. But if you do it like we do, and we're on a cruise trail, we walk steady, non-stop. And we only use these post trails once a deer season. And when we do use them, and then before our hunting season begins. And we put no cameras. We've learned that one now too. If you're going to go back to a camera regularly before the deer season, because you're going to see big bucks on your pictures, you're doing the same thing. You're ruining that spot. No, it's all right to use trail sand, trail cams during the summer, but we've learned now, we don't want a trail cam near any future stand sites we're going to use at the opening weekend. We don't want any walking to those for 2 weeks. Nothing there, or longer. When we first started doing that on that previous feeding area we were talking about a little while ago, we started doing that. Once the season started, that was the only place we got deer that year. When we quit doing that, going back to stand sites, I have to do that in my studies. So in some areas I have to do that anyway. But there's 2 places that are really bad as far as big buck. Trails where your trail scents are renewed often, and stand sites where you have an area that's just full of trail scents around that tree. And the tree smells as well. Pretty soon, every deer that lives there says, well, you gotta stay away from that area. If you aren't walking all over this place like a lot of hunters do, well, then you're gonna have all kinds of deer living in this area, but you never see them. So, trail scents and airborne scents, you got to be thinking about both before and during the hunting season. And if you do that, then your odds of taking big bucks are much, much improved. Okay? So, with that, quick for the day. I've already talked an awful long time again. Be sure to subscribe. I appreciate it. Would you do that? And when if you have any questions after you've seen the seminar, go ahead and write. There's a place to do that, on these. And then also check the thumbs up for me, will you, too? Because those are important to being a YouTube presenter. Do that as a favor to me. But subscribe and give me a plus on that, and a thumbs up if you enjoyed what you learned today. Before I leave, I want to say, too, this, I think, is one of the most important lessons you can learn about hunting older bucks, what you've learned today. This is really important stuff. From now on, you can't eliminate trail scents. They fade away, but when you're wherever you're walking, you're going to leave some there. You can't avoid making those trails, the trails of scent like that. You can't do anything about it. So you have to start thinking about ways to minimize the effect of trail scents like I've been talking about. This is a big one. A cruise route with branching stand side post trails. And only use that. No other trails. None other. And then you'll have all kinds of deer living in there. So, okay. Thanks a lot, guys, for watching. I'll see you again soon. Be sure to visit my website. Here's the link. Here you'll find links to my blog posts, my Twitter account, my YouTube account, my Amazon store with links to my ebooks, my son's eBay store, a money saver if you're ordering from Canada or other countries, my website bookstore, and much more.